The first thing they sold wasn't my body. It was my name. They took it the way you peel a label off a jar, clean, quick, like it had always been theirs to begin with. Lot 17, Sloane Kessler announced, voice smooth enough to butter toast. Omega. Zero cycle. Unmarkable. Not Noah. Not the kid who used to hoard strawberry Pop-Tarts in the dorm pantry and pretend he didn't cry at animal rescue videos. Just 3 words, delivered like features on a listing. The room was white on white, sterile, glossy, too bright. Glass walls. Glass floor panels under my feet. No windows. No corners soft enough for shadows. The air smelled like antiseptic and money, and if that isn't the perfect description of my life lately, I don't know what is. Behind the tinted panels, the bidders sat like ghosts. Faces erased by design. Only voices floated through, sharp and calm and hungry. Unmarkable, someone repeated, and I heard the smile in it. What's the catch? Sloane gave a low chuckle, like the question was charming. No catch, that's the point. You can't bind him biologically, which makes him versatile. Versatile. Sure. Like a convertible. Like a kitchen appliance. My spine went cold anyway. It started at the base of my neck and slid down, slow as a knife. My hands didn't shake, years of training taught my body how to freeze instead, but my chest felt hollow. The kind of empty that doesn't echo because there's nothing left inside to bounce sound off. I kept my expression neutral. Professional. Polite. If you're going to be sold, you might as well be well behaved about it. That was the lesson. I stared straight ahead at my reflection in the glass panel across from me. My hair had been brushed back by someone who'd never touched my head with affection. My collarbone looked too sharp under the thin black shirt they'd dressed me in. My eyes, too bright, too awake. Like a trapped animal with a degree in customer service. Sloane continued. Clean medical record. Compliance training complete.
If this story caught you, subscribe. More are waiting.
No history of violent episodes. And because of the zero cycle, rare, a voice cut in. Male. Deep. Mild interest, like he was browsing watches. Sloane's smile sharpened. Extremely. Numbers started. Quiet at first, then faster. Someone threw out a price that made my stomach drop. Someone else doubled it like it was pocket change. I'd been in rooms like this before, when I was younger, before I understood how the world worked. Back then, I thought monsters wore masks and carried weapons. Turns out, monsters wear cologne. They have lawyers. I kept breathing. In, out, like I could trick my body into believing there was still a reason to keep doing it. A woman's voice, bored, he won't hold a bond. You'll lose him the moment he decides to leave. A man answered, amused. That's why you don't let him decide. Laughter, soft, private, slid through the glass. My throat tightened. I swallowed and tasted metal. My heartbeat stayed slow, but that was the problem. Slow meant resigned. Slow meant my body had already accepted the script. Then the bidding paused for a beat, as if the room collectively leaned forward. DOMINIK VALE, Sloane said. The name didn't come with a number. It came with gravity. Someone near the panels exhaled sharply. Another voice muttered. Of course. DOMINIK VALE. The alpha who bought companies like other people bought coffee. The man whose security corporation had a contract with the city and 3 private islands and a reputation for making problems disappear. I didn't see him. None of them could be seen. That was the point. 5 million, a voice said. Male, controlled, emotionless. Not Sloane. Not the bidders behind the glass. The voice came from the intercom, clear as a judge's sentence. Sloane's eyes gleamed. We have 5 million. Someone tried to top it. The number jumped, climbed, staggered. Sloane played them like a pianist, fingers invisible, timing perfect. And then, quiet. A final click. A pause long enough for the air to feel thicker. Sold, Sloane said, almost tender. To Mr. Vale. My lungs forgot what to do for half a second. Not fear, not relief. Something else. A strange, sharp sensation. Like walking into a room and realizing you've been there before, years ago, in a dream you never told anyone about. Like a chord struck somewhere behind my ribs. I glanced at the glass, expecting to see myself flinch. I didn't. I just stared at my own face and thought very calmly, very stupidly. Oh. Because the emptiness in my chest hadn't filled. It had shifted, making room for a feeling I didn't recognize. And for the first time all night, I wondered if being bought was the worst thing that could happen to me. Or if the worst thing would be realizing I wasn't afraid of the man who'd just paid for my life. The corporate legal office smelled like espresso and expensive paper, the kind of scent that says we ruin lives politely here. Everything was glass and chrome. The chairs were minimalist art pretending to be furniture. The receptionist offered me water and a bottle that probably cost more than my first apartment's rent. I sat at a long conference table that looked like it had never been touched by human anxiety. Across from me, a lawyer in a slate gray suit arranged documents into a perfect stack. Her manicure was subtle, which in this building felt like an aggressive choice. To my right stood Gabe. Beta, late 30s maybe. The kind of man who looked like he slept 8 hours a night out of sheer spite. His tie was slightly crooked, like he'd done it on purpose to remind the room he was not, in fact, a robot. He leaned down a fraction and murmured, "If you ask for a snack, I'm contractually obligated to pretend I didn't hear you." I blinked. "Is that a joke?" His mouth twitched. "I'm a beta. We survive on caffeine and sarcasm." Okay. So the building wasn't entirely soulless, just mostly. The door at the end of the room opened without drama. No flourish, no entourage. DOMINIK VALE walked in alone. Tall. Not in a flashy way. More like the ceiling had been built with him in mind. His suit was black, fitted, perfect, and somehow still managed to look like armor. Dark hair, neatly cut. No unnecessary jewelry. No smile. He didn't flood the room with alpha scent the way some did, like a territorial spray. If anything, he felt contained, controlled. The air around him was still. His gaze moved over the table, the documents, the lawyer, and then past me, as if I were a chair someone had added at the last minute. Not ignored. Assessed. Filed. I hated that my pulse jumped anyway. The lawyer stood. "Mr. Vale, everything is prepared. This is the standard guardianship and patronage contract under section." "Skip the speech," DOMINIK said, voice low and calm. No sharpness. No warmth. Just efficiency. The lawyer sat back down like she'd been gently switched off. DOMINIK took the seat at the head of the table. Not across from me, at an angle, like this meeting was about paperwork, not people. His hands were bare. No ring. No watch. Nothing to tap or fidget with. He signed without hesitation. I watched his pen move, precise, decisive, and waited. Waited for the moment that always came after. The moment where the new owner, patron, sponsor, whatever label made it legal, would finally look at me like a purchase. Waited for the first demand. A touch. A command. A test of obedience. DOMINIK slid the signed documents toward the lawyer and said, "Add the consent clause." The lawyer hesitated. "Sir, it's already implied." "I don't do implied," he replied. Something in my stomach twisted. Not relief. Not fear. Confusion. The lawyer adjusted papers quickly. "Of course, consent clause, explicit." DOMINIK turned his head slightly. Not toward me. Toward the space next to me, like looking directly would be. "Something. Your name," he said. I swallowed. My voice came out steady because I'd trained it that way. "Noah." A pause. Small. Almost invisible. Then, "Noah," he repeated. Like he was tasting the word to make sure it was real. My chest did something stupid. Tightened. Like a fist closing. DOMINIK's gaze finally landed on me, just once, brief as a camera flash. His eyes were dark. Not cold exactly. More like the surface of deep water. Calm until you remember what it can swallow. "I'm going to be clear," he said. "You have freedom of movement within my residences and properties. You'll have a private room, private medical care, access to communication." I waited, nails pressing into my palm under the table. "And," he continued, voice steady, "no one touches you without your consent." The silence after that felt louder than the auction hall. I stared at him. "That's it?" Gabe made a quiet sound that could have been a cough or a laugh. He covered it with a sip of coffee. DOMINIK didn't react. "That's it." My brain scrambled for the hidden hook. There had to be one. There was always one. People didn't buy things to not use them. "So what do you want?" I asked before I could stop myself. The words came out sharper than intended. "Because you didn't pay that much for a roommate." DOMINIK's jaw flexed once. A muscle ticking beneath skin like a warning light. For the first time something flickered behind his calm, an emotion so fast I almost missed it. Fear. Not of me. Of himself. He leaned back a fraction, creating distance as if proximity might burn. I want, he said carefully, you alive. I laughed, one short, incredulous burst. Wow. The bar is in hell and we're still limbo dancing. Gabe's mouth fully curved now. Told you. Sarcasm helps. Dominik's gaze held mine for a second longer than before. Then he stood. The meeting was over, just like that. As he passed me, he didn't brush my shoulder, didn't let his scent flare, didn't even let the air between us make contact. But my body reacted anyway. Skin prickling, lungs tightening, my heartbeat stumbling like it had missed a step. Not because he touched me, because he didn't. And somehow, that felt more dangerous than anything I'd prepared for. Gabe motioned toward the door. Come on, Noah, welcome to the weirdest contract of your life. I stood on legs that felt too light. Behind me, the lawyer gathered papers like nothing had happened. In front of me, DOMINIK VALE walked out like a man who'd just bought a storm and was terrified of what would happen if he reached into it. The penthouse was quiet in the way only expensive places ever are, soundproofed, deliberate, controlled. No creaks. No distant neighbors. Just the low hum of a city pressed flat against floor-to-ceiling glass. My room faced east. Morning spilled light across clean lines and pale walls, over furniture that looked like it had never been sat on emotionally. A bed, a desk, a chair, no clutter, no scent, nothing that belonged to me yet. The view was ridiculous. The city stretched out like a living thing, steel veins, glowing windows, traffic pulsing far below. I stood there the first night longer than I meant to, forehead resting against the glass, trying to remember what it felt like to look down from somewhere high without feeling like I might be pushed. No one pushed. That was the problem. Days passed. Real ones. With mornings and coffee and silence that didn't break no matter how long I waited. DOMINIK VALE did not come to my door. He didn't check on me. He didn't summon me. He didn't test me. I saw him exactly twice, once across the penthouse as he left for work, suit immaculate, expression unreadable, once late at night. When he crossed the living space like a shadow, eyes fixed on a tablet, presence contained so tightly it felt like a held breath. He never entered my room. Never brushed past me in the hallway. Never let his scent fill the space the way alphas sometimes did without thinking, like a territorial yawn. At first, I counted it as a win. Then the questions crept in. If I wasn't being claimed, what was I? If I wasn't being used, did I even exist here? Or was I just stored? I tried to keep busy. Explored the penthouse under the polite supervision of security cameras that pretended not to notice me. Ate food I didn't choose. Slept in a bed that didn't smell like anyone. On the third night the silence got loud enough to hurt. I found him in the kitchen at nearly midnight, standing barefoot on marble, like it didn't cost a fortune to exist. He was dressed down, black shirt, sleeves rolled, dark hair slightly out of place, no jacket, no armor. He was making tea. Of all the terrifying alpha behaviors I'd imagined, that hadn't made the list. You know, I said, leaning against the counter because, if I stood too straight my nerves might show. This is usually the part where you tell me I belong to you. He didn't look up. The kettle clicked off. Is it? He asked mildly. I frowned. You bought me. I purchased a contract, he corrected, pouring hot water with steady hands. There's a difference. Feels semantic. A pause. He set the kettle down with more care than necessary. Does it? He asked. I studied him then. The way his shoulders stayed squared even in a kitchen. The way his jaw tightened just slightly when he spoke to me, like he was bracing for impact. You haven't touched me, I said, blunt now because subtlety had gotten me nowhere. Not once. His hand stilled. The air changed. Not with scent, but with tension, like a wire pulled too tight. That's intentional, he said. Why? He finally turned. Not all the way. Enough to look at me without closing the distance between us. Because you didn't consent. I laughed, short and sharp. I was on an auction block. And now you're not, he said. The words hit harder than I expected. My chest did that hollow thing again. So what? I pressed, because something ugly inside me needed an answer. You're just waiting? Until I get bored? Until I ask? No, he said, immediately. Too fast. I caught it. The flash of something under the calm. Frustration. Fear. Something wound tight and angry and not at me. I'm not waiting for anything, he said more carefully. I'm maintaining distance. Because? I tilted my head. You think you'll contaminate me? A beat. If I touch you, he said, voice lower now. I don't know if I'll stop. There it was. Not lust. Not hunger. Control. My breath caught. Traitorous. That's supposed to scare me? Yes, he said honestly. It didn't. Not the way it should have. What scared me was that he'd said it like a confession, not a threat. So what am I to you? I asked quietly. A responsibility? He didn't answer right away. He took his mug and stepped back, increasing the distance like it physically mattered. For now, he said, you're someone I won't turn into a mistake. Something in me twisted. Sharp, uncomfortable. And if I want to be one? I challenged, because I was tired of being handled like glass. What if I want you to look at me like you paid for me? His eyes darkened. You don't, he said. The certainty in his voice rattled me. How do you know? Because you're still standing, he replied. If you wanted that, you'd be on your knees asking why I hadn't done it yet. Heat flushed my face. Anger, and something dangerously close to embarrassment collided in my chest. Good night, Dominic, I snapped, pushing away from the counter. He watched me go, not with possession, not with hunger, but with something that felt worse. Restraint. Back in my room, I shut the door and leaned against it, breathing hard like I'd just run up 10 flights of stairs. The city glittered outside, indifferent. I pressed my hand to my chest and whispered the question I hadn't dared say out loud. If I'm not being claimed, am I being chosen at all? Somewhere beyond the glass and marble, I felt him pause, like the same question had stopped him too, and that terrified me more than any touch ever had. The medical center didn't look like a place where people broke. That should have been my first warning. Everything was clean and warm and carefully neutral. Soft lighting, pale wood. Accents, art on the walls that suggested healing without committing to it. The kind of place where bad news arrived dressed as concern. I sat on an examination table that adjusted itself to my weight, feet, dangling like I was 12 again and pretending not to be scared. A thin scanner ring hovered near my wrist, humming softly as it took readings. Dr. Imani Park stood across from me, tablet in hand. She wore no lab coat, just a dark green blouse and slacks, hair pulled back in a way that said efficiency without apology. Her scent was calm, steady. Beta with just enough authority to make alphas listen. You've been through this before, she said, not unkindly. I shrugged. Depends which part. The wires or the part where someone explains my body like it's a malfunctioning product? Her mouth curved, just a little. I'll aim for honesty instead. Bold choice, I muttered. She tapped the tablet, and the scanner retracted. Your zero cycle isn't a lack of function, she began. It's a refusal. I blinked. That sounds philosophical for biology. Biology is political, she said. In your case, especially. She pulled up a holographic display between us, graphs, cycles, familiar shapes I'd seen my whole life. And then the absence where mine should have been. Omegas are expected to be predictable, she continued. Heat cycles, bonding responses, chemical compliance. The system depends on that predictability, and I don't do any of that, I said. You don't, she agreed. Your body never enters a receptive cycle. No biological window for imprinting. No hormonal cascade that allows a mark to settle. So I'm defective, I said lightly. She met my gaze. You're uncontrollable. The word landed heavy. Which is why, she went on. You're considered dangerous. I snorted. I can barely assemble furniture without crying. Imani smiled, brief and sharp. Dangerous to structures, Noah, not people. You break the narrative. She leaned against the counter, folding her arms. An omega who can't be marked, can't be owned the way the system expects. That makes you proof that the hierarchy isn't natural, it's enforced. Cold spread through my chest. Not fear. Recognition. So, they sell me, I said slowly. Instead of letting me exist. They monetize you, she corrected. You become a controlled anomaly. A cautionary tale, a luxury problem. I swallowed. If I'm such a threat, why didn't they just erase me? Imani's jaw tightened. Because you're more valuable alive. The door slid open without a knock. Sloan Kessler walked in like he owned the air. He was dressed impeccably, as always. Tailored suit, pleasant expression, eyes sharp as broken glass under the polish. He smiled when he saw me. The kind of smile that pretended we'd met at brunch instead of an auction block. Noah, he said warmly. I was hoping you'd still be here. Imani straightened. This is a medical consultation. Of course, Sloan replied smoothly. I wouldn't dream of interrupting. Think of me as checking on an investment. My fingers curled against the table. I'm not for sale anymore, I said. Sloane chuckled. Everything is for sale. It's just a matter of timing. He turned to Imani. You can go. Mr. Vale requested a moment alone. Imani didn't move. Did he? Sloane's smile thinned. I'll make a note of your concern. After a tense beat, she looked at me. I'll be right outside, she said quietly. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. Sloane stepped closer, lowering his voice like we were sharing a secret. You've landed in a very expensive cage, Noah. Funny, I said. It doesn't feel locked. That's because you're new, he replied. And because DOMINIK VALE enjoys the illusion of choice. Something in his tone made my skin prickle. He's protecting me, I said more confidently than I felt. Sloane's eyes flicked with interest. Is he? Yes. From what? He asked gently. I hesitated. From us? He offered. From the system that would tear you apart for what you represent? Or from himself? My heart thudded. You think he bought you out of kindness, Sloane continued. I think he bought you because you're dangerous. And men like him don't collect dangers. They neutralize them. He straightened, smile back in place. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. Assets like you tend to appreciate. When he left, the room felt colder. Imani returned a moment later, anger tight in her shoulders. I'm sorry. I shook my head. Don't be. I needed to hear it. As we walked down the corridor, I stared at the glass walls, at my reflection layered over medical equipment and city light. For the first time, the picture shifted. Dominic wasn't my jailer. He was standing between me and a machine that didn't know how to let people like me exist. And the scariest part? He was doing it with his hands tied behind his back, because the one thing he refused to use as a weapon was me. The first time it happened, I thought I was imagining it. It was past midnight, the penthouse wrapped in darkness broken only by the city's glow leaking through the glass. My room was quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting my own inhales just to prove I still owned them. Then my chest tightened. Not panic. Not fear. Anxiety, but not mine. It pressed into me slowly, like a weight settling behind my ribs. Sharp. Focused. Controlled to the point of pain. I sat up, heart starting to race a half-beat too late, as if my body was reacting after the fact. What the hell? I whispered. The feeling shifted, fatigue now. Bone deep. The kind that didn't come from lack of sleep but from holding yourself together for too long without rest. I'd felt it before. In mirrors. In other people. But never like this. I swung my legs off the bed, bare feet touching cool floor. The city beyond the glass shimmered, indifferent. Somewhere across the penthouse, I felt it again. Tension spiking, a flash of restrained anger so sudden it made my stomach flip. Dominic. The realization landed fully formed, unwanted and impossible. I hadn't smelled him. No alpha scent flooded the air. Nothing biological, nothing explainable. Just presence. Emotion. Like a signal slipping through a wall that shouldn't conduct sound. I pressed my palm to my chest, grounding myself. Get it together, Noah, I muttered. You're tired, that's all. I went back to bed. Sleep took me hard and fast. I was standing in a dark room I didn't recognize. Concrete walls, no windows. A single overhead light buzzed like an insect. The air smelled like iron and ozone. Pain hit me without warning. Not sharp. Not sudden. Deep. A crushing pressure in my shoulder, my side, like something heavy had slammed into me and stayed there. My breath came shallow, my vision blurring at the edges. No, I gasped, clutching at myself. But the pain didn't originate in my body. It echoed. Anger burned through it next, hot, violent, strangled. Rage with nowhere to go. I felt it coil tight, forced down, controlled to the point of fracture. Stop, I thought. Though I didn't know who I was speaking to. Then, fear. Not of death. Of losing control. I woke up with a sharp inhale, heart pounding, sheets twisted around my legs. My shoulder ached as if I'd slept on it wrong. My skin was damp with sweat. Across the penthouse, something slammed. I was on my feet before my brain caught up. The hallway lights flickered on as I moved, bare and breathless, following a pull I didn't want to acknowledge. The living space opened wide, glass, steel, darkness beyond. Dominik stood near the far window, one hand braced against the glass like he needed it to stay upright. His shoulders were rigid. His breath came slow and forced. He wasn't wearing a jacket, just a dark shirt clinging to his frame, hair disheveled like he'd dragged his hands through it one too many times. He turned when he sensed me. His eyes locked on mine. For a split second, the control cracked. I felt it like a blow. Raw pain flaring, sharp and immediate, then dragged back under by sheer will. "You shouldn't be up," he said, voice tight. "I felt you," I said before I could stop myself. The words hung between us. Dominik went very still. "That's not possible," he said. "I know," I replied. My pulse thundered in my ears. "But I did." Silence stretched. Thick. Charged. He looked away first, jaw clenched so hard it trembled. "You're tired," he said. "Your mind is looking for patterns." "Then why does my shoulder hurt?" I asked quietly. His breath hitched. I took a step closer. Then another. He didn't retreat. But he didn't advance either. The space between us felt electric, humming with something unnamed. "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing," he said automatically. I laughed, soft and humorless. "Dominik, I just felt someone else's pain in my sleep." "Don't insult me." His control snapped. Not outward, not violent. Inward. He turned sharply, pacing a short distance like a caged thing. "You shouldn't feel anything from me," he said, voice low and strained. "There's no bond, no mark, no rules," I finished. He stopped. Slowly he faced me again. "This isn't normal," he said. "This isn't how dynamics work." "No," I agreed. "It's not." Something flickered across his face then. Fear, bare and unarmored. "I've been angry all night," he admitted. Words forced out like shards. "Tired. On the edge of losing control." "And if you felt that?" "I did," I said. "And if it reached you without a bond," he continued, voice dropping, "then whatever this is, it's not something I can shut off." My chest tightened, that strange pull coiling deeper now. Not scent. Not instinct. Recognition. "So what does that make us?" I asked. Dominik's gaze held mine, unflinching and shaken. "Dangerous," he said softly. "To ourselves." The city burned bright behind him, 1,000 lives unaware of the line we'd just crossed. I didn't step back. Neither did he. And in the quiet hum of the penthouse, we both understood the same terrifying truth. This wasn't restraint anymore. It was connection. And it shouldn't exist. The charity gala looked like a glass cathedral built for money to worship itself. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped the space in a panoramic view of the city, lights glittering like an offering. Crystal chandeliers refracted everything into sharp brilliance. People moved in careful clusters, tailored suits, sculpted gowns, laughter calibrated to the room. I stood beside Dominik Vale and felt like a typo in a very expensive sentence. He hadn't asked me to come. He hadn't told me not to. He'd simply said, "You can," when I mentioned the event, and something in his tone had made it clear that the choice mattered. So I came. I wore black, simple clean lines, nothing that screamed Omega. No collar. No mark. Just me, standing where I was never meant to stand, with my spine straight and my pulse steady. Eyes followed us the moment we entered. Not openly, not rudely. But I felt the shift, the recalculation. People noticed what didn't fit. Dominik moved through the room with the ease of a man who owned space without needing to claim it. He greeted donors, accepted praise, deflected questions with minimal effort. He never touched me. Not even to guide me through the crowd. He didn't need to. I stayed close anyway. Then the temperature dropped. Rhea Marlowe appeared like a perfect weapon made of silk and bone. She was tall, elegant, impossibly polished. Silver hair swept back, eyes sharp with practiced charm. Her scent brushed the room lightly, alpha-controlled and expensive, like she'd learned how to make dominance palatable. Her gaze locked on Dominik. Then it slid to me. And stopped. I felt it, the assessment, the calculation, the dismissal. "Well," she said, stepping closer with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "this is unexpected." "Rhea," Dominik replied calmly. She kissed his cheek, air only, never touching skin, and turned fully to face me. "And you are?" I met her gaze. "Noah." Her smile thinned by a millimeter. Ah. The anomaly? There it was. I felt Dominik's tension spike, anger pulled tight under his skin, but he didn't interrupt. Rhea tilted her head, studying me like a cracked mirror. I'd heard rumors, she continued lightly. I assumed they were exaggerated. About what? I asked. That Dominic had made a sentimental purchase, she said. Turns out it's worse. A few nearby conversations faltered. Attention sharpened. Rhea turned back to Dominic, voice smooth and carrying. You do realize how this looks? I do, he said. And you're comfortable being associated with something so destabilizing? Something, not someone. I waited for it then, for the denial, the distancing, the polite lie. Dominic didn't flinch. I'm comfortable, he said evenly, with my decisions. Rhea's eyes narrowed. You don't need to explain yourself to me. I'm not, he replied. The silence that followed was immediate and heavy. I felt it then. Something I hadn't expected. Not relief. Pride. Rhea's gaze flicked back to me, sharper now. You should be careful, she said softly. Men like him don't keep mistakes. The word hit, but it didn't sink in. Because Dominic turned, not to face her, but to face me. He didn't touch me. Didn't shield me. He simply stood there, unmovable, presence solid and unapologetic. Noah isn't a mistake, he said. Just that. No qualifiers. No justifications. Rhea stared at him, stunned. Then she laughed quietly. You're serious? Yes. And you're willing to let this, she gestured vaguely in my direction, damage your reputation? Dominic's eyes hardened. My reputation isn't fragile. Her smile vanished. This will cost you. I know. For the first time I saw it clearly, the way power shifted in the room. The way people recalculated again, not around me, but around him. Rhea straightened, dignity snapping back into place. Enjoy your evening, she said coolly. Both of you. She walked away like a queen retreating from a battlefield she hadn't expected to lose. I exhaled slowly, hands clenched at my sides. Dominic leaned slightly closer, not touching, but near enough that I felt the warmth of him. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded. Then paused. You didn't have to do that. I know. Then, why? Because I won't apologize for you, he said. Ever? Something inside my chest loosened, just a little. For the first time since the auction. Since the glass and the numbers and the voices without faces. I stood in a room full of power, and didn't feel like something to be hidden. I felt present, chosen, not claimed. And as the city glittered beyond the glass, I realized something that changed the shape of everything. Dominic Vale wasn't protecting his image. He was protecting my right to exist in his world without shame. Dr. Imani's office smelled like rain and disinfectant, the kind of clean that pretended it had nothing to hide. I sat across from her, with my hands folded in my lap. Posture too neat. Outside the glass wall the city moved on, unaware that my insides were rearranging themselves. You asked to see me, I said. She nodded. Fingers steepled, eyes steady. You felt him again. It wasn't a question. Yes, I replied. And this time I know it wasn't stress or coincidence. It was specific. Imani took a breath, then another, like she was choosing which truth to start with. There are documented cases, she began carefully, of non-standard pair bonds. I laughed, sharp and humorless. That's not an answer. No, she agreed. It's a warning. She turned her tablet toward me. I didn't look at it yet. I watched her face instead. How serious she was. How resolved. True mates, she said. The words landed softly, almost gently. My chest tightened anyway. That's a fairy tale. It's a biological anomaly, she corrected. Rare, unpredictable. Often, devastating. I swallowed. Devastating how? Because the connection doesn't require a mark, she said. Or consent. Or proximity. It forms whether you want it to or not. My pulse picked up. I felt it in my throat. You're saying that your zero cycle doesn't prevent bonding, she said. It prevents ownership. The bond forms anyway. It just doesn't lock. Images flashed through my mind. Dominic's restrained anger, the pain in my dream. The way my body reacted to his presence without scent or touch. And he knew, I said. Imani didn't answer. Didn't he? My voice shook despite my best efforts. He knew before the auction. Yes, she said quietly. Something cracked. How long? I demanded. She met my gaze. Long enough to be certain. I stood so abruptly my chair scraped the floor. So he bought me. To remove you from circulation, she said quickly. To keep the system from tearing you apart. By lying to me? I shot back. He didn't lie, she said. He didn't tell you. The difference felt academic at best. I left before she could stop me. The penthouse was quiet when I arrived. Lights dimmed like the place was waiting for a verdict. Dominik stood near the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled, staring out at the city like it had personally offended him. You knew, I said. He didn't turn. Yes. The word hit harder than denial would have. You knew, I repeated, stepping closer, anger rising hot and sharp. And you let me think I was losing my mind. I let you think, he said slowly, that you had agency. I laughed, breathless. Agency? You bought me. I bought a contract, he said, turning then, eyes dark and steady. And I honored it. You bought me knowing I was your true mate, I snapped. Knowing I'd feel you whether I wanted to or not. His jaw tightened. I bought you so no one else could. And that makes it better? I demanded. You took away my choice before I even knew there was one. He stepped back, increasing the distance like it was a habit now. If I'd told you. If you'd told me, I interrupted. I could have decided whether I wanted this. Whether I wanted you. Silence stretched between us, thick and aching. I was afraid, he said finally. Afraid that the truth would trap you. That knowing would feel like a mark you couldn't remove. And lying didn't. I shot back. Something flickered across his face, pain, unguarded and raw. I never touched you. No, I said bitterly. You just rearranged my life and emotions, without asking. His voice dropped. I protected you. Protection without consent, I said, is just another kind of cage. The words hung there, heavy. I didn't want to be your fate, he said quietly. I wanted to be your choice. You don't get to decide how I arrive at that choice, I replied. My chest burned. You don't get to sculpt my freedom and call it kindness. He didn't argue. That hurt, more than if he had. I don't know what this bond is, I said, softer now, exhaustion seeping in. But I won't accept it if it costs me my autonomy. Dominik nodded once. Then I won't ask you to. I stared at him, searching for the catch. There is no condition, he continued. No expectation, no timeline. If you decide this connection is unacceptable, you'll let me go, I finished. Yes. The certainty in his voice shook me. I turned away before he could see how much. My hands trembled at my sides, anger giving way to something more dangerous. Grief. Because even now, especially now, I felt him. The steady weight of his presence. The pull that didn't care about ethics or contracts. He hadn't promised me the truth. And somehow, that was the one thing I couldn't forgive yet. The penthouse felt abandoned that night. Not empty, abandoned. Like a place people had fled from in a hurry, leaving behind too much space and not enough air. The city outside glittered, uncaring, but inside the glass walls everything was still, dimmed down to shadows and reflected light. I stood barefoot in the living room, arms crossed tight over my chest, trying to decide whether I was furious enough to leave, or exhausted enough to stay. Dominik was at the far end of the room, near the window, back turned. His jacket lay abandoned on a chair. His tie was gone. Sleeves rolled up, hands braced on the glass like the city might push back if he leaned too hard. Neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't hostile. It was brittle. One wrong word, and it would shatter. I'm not staying because I'm trapped, I said finally. My voice echoed more than I liked. He nodded once, slow. I know. I'm staying because I need answers. I'll give you all of them, he said. No filters. That got my attention. I took a step closer. Why didn't you touch me? He exhaled, long and careful. Because I wanted to. That wasn't the answer I expected. I'm an alpha. He continued quietly. Touch isn't neutral for me, especially not with you. With me, I repeated. He turned then. Fully. No distance this time, just open space between us charged with something sharp and aching. With my true mate, he said. The words didn't explode. They settled, heavy, undeniable. You felt it too, he went on. Before the auction. Before the contract. That pull you didn't have a name for. Yes, I said. My throat tightened. And I hated it. So did I. I stared at him. You don't look like someone who hates power. I don't hate power, he replied. I hate what it does when it goes unchecked. He ran a hand through his hair, the motion rougher than usual. Every structure I've built, every company, every security protocol, exists because someone once decided control was more important than consent. And you didn't want to be that person, I said. I didn't want to be your first cage, he said bluntly. The honesty in his voice knocked the air from my lungs. You think I don't know what it looks like? He continued, stepping closer, but stopping well short of touching me. An alpha who says I'm doing this for your own good. An alpha who swears he's different. You are different, I said before I could stop myself. He flinched. That's what scares me, he admitted. Because if I convince myself I'm different, I stop questioning where the line is. My hands curled into fists. So instead you bought me? Yes. You decided for me? Yes. The admission was brutal in its simplicity. I decided, he said, voice low and steady, that the system would not get you, that I would carry the guilt of that choice instead of letting you carry the consequences of it. I laughed weakly. That's not selfless. That's control with better branding. I know, he said. Silence fell again, thick with everything we weren't saying. I took another step forward. Close enough now to feel his warmth, the steady rhythm of him. My body responded traitorously, heartbeat sinking, breath catching. You know what terrifies me? I said quietly. He didn't move. Tell me that you're the first alpha I've ever met who's afraid of hurting me. His eyes softened, just a fraction. Enough. I am terrified, he said. Because I know what I'm capable of. And I know what you do to my control. I swallowed. You think you'd break me? I know I would, he said. If I touched you without your permission. If I claimed you because I could. And if I asked you to? I whispered. The air between us snapped tight. He shook his head immediately. Not like that. Why not? Because I need to know, he said, voice rough now, that if you choose me, it's not because the bond pulled you here, or because I removed every other option. I searched his face, this man who owned cities and companies and still stood in front of me like he was waiting for a verdict. I don't want you to stay, he said quietly. Because you think there's nowhere else to go. The words hit somewhere deep. Somewhere fragile. I want you to stay, he continued, because you looked at the door when it was open, and decided to turn around. Something in my chest cracked, not painfully but enough to let light in. I exhaled slowly. You're asking a lot. I know. And if I decide I can't do this? I asked. If the bond feels like a violation no matter how gentle you are? He nodded once. Then I'll live with that. I stared at him, stunned. You'd let me walk away, I said. Yes. Even if it destroys you. My mind supplied. I didn't say it. Instead, I took one last step forward, close enough now that our breaths mingled, that the world narrowed down to the space between us. You haven't touched me, I said softly. No. But you've been holding yourself back this whole time. Yes. For me. Yes. I felt it then. Clear and undeniable. Not dominance. Not possession. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear for me. And for the first time in my life I stood in front of an alpha who wasn't asking how much of me he could take, but how much he could protect without stealing. That realization shook me more than any mark ever could. The legal office looked exactly the same as it had the first day. Chrome. Glass. Neutral art that pretended not to watch you. The smell of espresso and paper that had never been touched by doubt. I sat in the same chair. This time, my hands weren't folded. Dominik stood beside the table, not across from me, not looming, just present. He wore a dark coat, open at the collar, no tie. He hadn't brought Gabe. No security detail. No witnesses that mattered. The lawyer cleared her throat. Mr. Vale, this termination is unusual. Yes, Dominik said calmly. I'm aware. You understand, she continued, careful now, that once this is finalized, you relinquish all legal responsibility, and all rights. I do. She glanced at me. Mr. Noah, you understand that this releases you from all obligations under the contract. I nodded. My mouth was too dry to trust my voice. The tablet slid across the table. One final signature. One final confirmation. Dominik didn't hesitate. He signed. The sound was small. Pen against glass. And just like that, the cage, however gentle, however padded, ceased to exist. The lawyer gathered the documents, efficient and detached. "You're free to go," she said to me. Like that was something people could just do. Dominic didn't look at me. Not yet. Outside, the city was bright, too bright. Daylight spilled between buildings, loud and alive. The sidewalk hummed with movement, people walking, talking, existing without permission. Dominic unlocked the car himself. No driver, no escort. I hesitated before getting in. "You don't have to," he said quietly. I know. I did anyway. The ride was silent, not awkward, not tense, just heavy with everything unsaid. He drove with the same control he did everything else, smooth, deliberate, careful. When he stopped, it wasn't at a building. It was just a street. A normal street. Cafes. Trees. A crosswalk blinking patiently. Life happening without regard for my internal crisis. Dominic parked and turned off the engine. "This is where I leave you," he said. I looked at him. "Just like that?" "Yes." No ceremony. No warning speech. No parting advice. I opened the door. The air outside hit me different, warmer, louder, real. I stepped onto the sidewalk and felt the ground under my feet like it might tilt. Behind me, the car door stayed open. I turned back. Dominic sat there, hands resting on the wheel, posture composed, but his eyes gave him away. Tension coiled tight beneath the surface, like he was holding himself still by force. "If you walk away," he said evenly, "I won't follow." The words landed harder than any command ever had. "And if I don't?" I asked. "Then I won't assume," he replied. "Anything." I swallowed. No chase. No pressure. No invisible leash tugging me back. This was it. Freedom. Real, unguarded, unowned. My chest tightened. Because freedom didn't feel like relief. It felt like standing on the edge of something vast with no instructions on how not to fall. I took a step away from the car. Then another. I waited for the pull. For the bond to drag me back, screaming that I was making a mistake. It didn't. People passed me on the sidewalk, brushing past without noticing. No one knew who I was. No one cared. I could disappear. The thought terrified me. I stopped and looked back. Dominic hadn't moved. Still there. Still not reaching. The realization settled slow and heavy. He had done the one thing no one ever had. He'd given me a door without a lock. No guard. No consequence. No promise. Just choice. My hands trembled. Not because I wanted to run, but because, for the first time in my life, staying would mean it was entirely my decision. I stood there, suspended between two steps, heart pounding loud enough to drown out the city, free, and utterly profoundly afraid of what that freedom asked of me next. Freedom, it turns out, smells like dust and cheap detergent. My apartment was small in the most honest way possible. One room pretending to be two, a kitchen that required creative optimism, and windows that faced another building's brick wall like it was an old friend. The furniture was borrowed, mismatched or rescued from places that didn't ask questions. It was perfect. The first night, I slept on the floor because the bed hadn't arrived yet. I stared at the ceiling and waited for the panic. It didn't come. What came instead was quiet, no security hum, no distant footsteps, no awareness of someone else's presence hovering just beyond reach. I made instant noodles for dinner and managed to overcook them. I laughed out loud at myself. The sound startling in the empty room. "Well done, Noah," I told the sink. Free and already failing at pasta. The city outside my window moved without me. Sirens, laughter, music bleeding from somewhere below. I walked until my legs hurt, learning the shape of my new freedom block by block. No one watched me. No one followed. I could go anywhere. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt unmoored. On the third day, I caught myself reaching for my phone to text him about the absurdly aggressive pigeon that had tried to steal my breakfast sandwich. I stared at the screen for a full minute before realizing what I was doing. "Oh," I said to the empty room. "That's unfortunate." I missed his quiet presence in the mornings. The way the penthouse never felt intrusive, only attentive. I missed the way he listened without trying to fix me. The way he held space instead of claiming it. I didn't miss being protected. I missed being understood. That was the part that snuck up on me. One afternoon I sat on the fire escape with a cup of coffee that tasted like regret and watched the city breathe. My shoulder ached faintly, not pain, just a memory of it. I closed my eyes. And felt him, not sharply, Not urgently. Just there. Like a low frequency I'd tuned out of habit. Stop that, I muttered to myself. He's not a radio station. The feeling didn't leave. It didn't pull either. It waited. That night, I lay on my new bed and stared at the ceiling. The room lit by passing headlights. My freedom pressed in around me, real and solid and heavy with possibility. I could build something here. I could disappear. I could never see him again. The thought didn't hurt the way I expected. It hollowed. I rolled onto my side and laughed softly. Congratulations, I told myself. You escaped the cage and fell for the man who held the door open. Outside, a couple argued loudly and then laughed. Life, messy and unscripted, went on. I wasn't lonely. I was choosing. And somewhere in that realization, I understood the truth I'd been circling for days. I didn't miss the safety. I missed the man who trusted me enough to let me walk away. And for the first time, the idea of going back didn't feel like surrender. It felt like agency. The penthouse looked the same. Glass. Height. The city spread out below like a promise that didn't need to be kept. What was different was me. I stood in the doorway for a moment longer than necessary. Fingers curled loosely at my sides, heart steady. No guards stopped me. No voice asked for confirmation. The door had never been locked. Dominic was on the terrace, jacket discarded over the back of a chair, the night air brushing through his rolled sleeves. He wasn't looking at the door. He wasn't waiting the way people wait when they expect something to return. He was just there. I stepped out. The sound was small, bare feet on stone, but he turned instantly. His posture went still, like a held breath caught between inhale and exhale. Noah, he said. Not surprise. Not relief. Recognition. I'm not here because I have nowhere else to go, I said before the silence could bend the moment out of shape. I know, he replied. I'm not here because of the bond. His jaw tightened, just slightly. I know. I took another step closer. The city hummed beneath us, alive and distant. I'm here because you let me leave, I said. And because when I did, nothing in me felt finished. He didn't move toward me. He didn't reach. I won't touch you, he said quietly. Not unless you ask. I smiled, a small, real thing that surprised me with its ease. I'm not asking for ownership. I wouldn't give it, he said. Good. The word settled between us, solid and gentle. We stood there, close enough now to feel the shared warmth, the steady pull that no longer frightened me. No scent flared. No instinct demanded completion. Just choice. I don't need a mark, I said softly. I know. I don't need proof, I continued. I need space to stay myself. You'll have it, he said without hesitation. I met his eyes then, really met them, and saw no hunger there, no claim. Only care, deliberate and restrained. I exhaled, the last of my doubt slipping free. Then, I said, voice steady. I'm staying. Something in him eased, not collapsing, not breaking. Just releasing. He nodded once. Welcome home. He let me go. I stayed. Time didn't change us the way the world expected it to. No mark ever appeared on my skin. No scent sealed anything permanent. The system never quite knew what to do with us. And eventually, it stopped trying. I moved between places freely. Sometimes the penthouse. Sometimes my apartment, which I kept because it mattered that I could. My life expanded instead of narrowing. Choice layered on choice. Dominic never stood over me. He stood beside me. In meetings he listened before speaking. In conflict, he waited instead of pushing. In quiet moments, he learned how to be present without pressing in. The bond remained. Not loud, not demanding. A low, steady awareness. Comfort. Recognition. Connection without possession. People whispered, of course, about the unmarked Omega, about the Alpha who didn't claim what was his by every outdated rule. We didn't correct them. We didn't need to. One evening, months later, we sat on the terrace again, the city breathing beneath us. I leaned back against the chair, coffee cooling in my hands. You know, I said, by every metric I'm still a problem. Dominic smiled faintly. So am I. I laughed, genuine and easy. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't claimed. I wasn't owned, rewritten or corrected. I was chosen. And I chose back. Zero didn't mean empty anymore. It meant free. And that was the only rule we ever needed.